right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss. I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. Thank you all so much for joining me today for this question and answer based podcast where you can send me a question and I will likely read it, consider it, and probably put it up on a future episode, as I'm doing today with two questions. So I have one audio question. I have one just regular old text question. I know, but I wanted to put two up here because I think they can be a little bit shorter and I'm going to pack them in, and just because I want to, and because there's a little bit of space and I have a little bit of time today. So I think we're going to do that. So if you would like your question answered or discussed here or just yammered on, or for me to make some snarky joke in there, I don't know, you can go over to fearcastpodcast.com, and you can click on the submit a question link, send me a question there. And by the way, on the website, you can check out every episode I've ever done. Even the Phobia Friday series that I did. This is a while ago, but super fun to do. It was really fun to do. But check them out. You can also send me an audio question over at Fearcast Podcast on the Instagrams. That's who I am over at said Instagrams. But check it out over there if you'd like to send me a message or just see some of my silly posts that I put up, or some of my wildly inspiring fix your soul kind of posts that I have up there. They're there. You just have to go through, and I think you have to heart all of them and then follow me. And I think after that, you get the inspiration and it fixes. Anyways, try it. Let me know if it works. If it does, email me. I'll be very curious to see how that goes. Anyhow, so thank you all again for joining me. This is the 200th episode. Now, that seems like a big deal. It probably is, but it's a big number. It's kind of a big number compared to some other podcasts out there. It is a big number compared to others. I've just been so honored to keep doing this. I started this like 6 years ago and didn't know if it was going to go anywhere, and it's gone someplace modest, but I think good. And I just appreciate you, the listeners, for letting me be a part of your process and entrusting me with your questions. So I don't take that lightly. I appreciate that, and it has been what has made this podcast special and has kept it going all these years. So again, thank you so much for trusting me with that. I'm not doing anything uniquely special for episode 200 because it's not really the 200th episode. 200th episode, if that's the case, happened probably weeks ago, because maybe months ago, because I didn't count the Phobia Friday episodes in the process. And I think I miscounted at some point, like a couple of years ago. I messed up the count, so I don't even know what I'm on. So I'm calling it 200. So yay, episode 200. We did it. All right, moving on. So let's get to two of these questions. Well, one question at a time of the two. So I'm going to start with the text question here. So the text question, again, was sent over over at fearcastpodcast.com. The other one, the audio question, was sent in through Instagram. By the way, you can also email me. I've got another one coming soon that is going to come from AA. So AA, I see you. You're coming. It's coming for you. But AA sent their question over just emailed me over at questions@fearcastpodcast.com. Record your question into your phone, email me that file. I'll get it. I'll listen to it. I'll post it. Coming for you, AA. Coming for you. All right. So let's quickly go over Stella's question. So Stella, it's not too long. We'll go for it. So it says, hey, first of all, thank you so much for providing us with such helpful information about OCD. Your podcast made me realize that I'm not crazy and that it's just moral OCD being a mean jerk. You're right, it is. Despite the progress I've made already, I still feel very confused about certain aspects of my OCD, like this one, : and then she goes on to explain. So it's going to be great. Here we go. She says, I've been experiencing a strange cycle for quite a bit now, where I become somewhat obsessed, and then she says parenthetically, which gives me a really icky feeling about myself. She goes on to say, with a special person, usually someone I like or admire, like a celebrity or a job-related role model. My brain is then forcing me to Google them constantly, or rather compulsively. I don't want to meet them. I don't even want to Google them. It's almost as if my brain forces me to do it. While I am, for example, looking at their photos in Google, this intense shame kicks in, and my brain convinces me that they're somehow aware of my creepy behavior, which makes me feel even more ashamed. Rationally, I know they aren't cyberstalking me or even aware of my actions, but I can't shake this feeling. I end up getting upset and feel like my brain is forcing me to Google them again, even though I don't really want to. And again, I feel horrible. Then I try to convince myself that that they don't know about me. And lastly, feel better, only for the whole process to start over again. Sometimes I also see, quote, signs which confirm my worry about them, about them having found out about my behavior. I can brush it off as irrational for a while, but then the question like, what if you're just in denial, pops up into my head again. I feel so messed up and ashamed of myself, especially since I also imagine myself in scenarios in which I say something rude and upsetting to them. It's also important to add that I really don't idolize them or put them on a pedestal. I only admire their work. Usually, it's someone who works in a field that I'm interested in as well. I feel really ashamed I feel really ashamed for being inspired. Wait, am I reading that right? I really feel ashamed for being inspired. I can't read sometimes, y'all, because my OCD says that I'm crossing a boundary. Funnily enough, I would never judge another person for having a role model or for feeling inspired by someone. Hopefully, it wasn't too confusing. Have a nice day. All right, it was only confusing because reading's hard. I don't like it. I've mentioned it before. Me reading on the podcast is like the hardest part of the podcast for me. I don't read aloud very well. And I have worked on it. I've gotten better at it, but man, it makes me feel nervous because I'm going to miss something or misread something. And you know what? Likely speaking, if I didn't say anything right now about it, you would not notice and probably wouldn't care. There's like 3 people out there who's going like, Kevin doesn't read good. He dumb. Probably. But I'm just sharing my anxiety. So anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to the answer, I suppose. So Stella, thank you so much for sending this in. It again makes the podcast great, and I appreciate the question. Anyways, so I'm just giggling myself now. I think a lot more compassion can be sent your way. You've got a sticky, icky brain that gets caught up and wrapped around somebody. As you said, it's someone you admire, or celebrity who has a kind of a job-related role model, something like that. I get it. There can be this thing where our brain grabs onto this and we want to know more about them and we want to learn more about them or whatever the case may be. We have questions about this person. Now, there's a reason. I'm kind of going about this in a very weird way. There's a reason that there are Wikipedia pages about these people. There's a reason that there is a personal life or I don't know, whatever the case may be, section on Wikipedia about someone. People are interested in other people. I think there's there's an understandable, that's the word, part of this where I think all of us can recognize and identify with. Now, the part where OCD kicks in is where it feels like there's this impulsive component to it. I have to do this. There's this draw, there's this urge to do it. And that's where and unfortunately you didn't answer this question. It's what's the point? Why do it? What's the necessary aspect to this? And another way to think about this is like, what happens if you don't? Like just because we have the thought that says, hey, you got to look up this person, doesn't necessarily mean that we have to look up this person. But it does mean that we have a question. I wonder X about this person, or I wonder what this picture looks like, or whatever the case may be. We can acknowledge that that's an urge, that's a desire. But I wonder for you is, what's the purpose and the point of you doing it? I know you recognized that there's that fear of like, what if I say something rude or upsetting to them? From that perspective, I hear that kind of that moral component, right? What if I do something wrong? Or what if similarly, what if I am doing something wrong by looking this person up? I think that's a rabbit hole that ultimately is going to put you into a losing position every single time. It's going to be that losing position, especially if that process that you're going through, and I don't know if you're necessarily doing this, but if there's a ruminative process of trying to explain this away or trying to justify it, or trying to get to a fuller understanding of why it is that you're doing this, and trying to convince yourself that everything's okay, that nothing's weird or wrong about what you're doing, because OCD doesn't matter what. It's going to say, well, yeah, but X. Yeah, but that person might think it's weird. Or yeah, but something that's going to undermine this perspective that you have, or this grounding that you're trying to find, right? It's interesting here at the end, you said, I feel really ashamed for being inspired because my OCD says that I'm crossing a boundary. Right? I don't know if inspired was quite the right word or what you were trying to say, but I hear that point about I'm crossing a boundary, like I'm doing something bad and wrong by doing this. I would encourage you in this. Now, there's a couple of things you can do with this, right? One, it's what I'm just curious about, like what are you trying to get out of this? What is the urge? What is the consequence of it? And what is the consequence if you don't look it up? Is it just, I'm trying to scratch this itch and I'm trying to get to this just right feeling? I'm trying to learn more about them so maybe I have a chance to get more into their career. There's the possibility that if we do meet, oh no, what if I say something bad about them? So I'm trying to figure out what to say or what not to say. That's the struggle that I think is a good part of this to help challenge. But for you, I would practice acknowledging when there's that urge. And then ultimately, if you're saying, I don't want to do this, you can say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create some boundaries around this. When I feel that urge to do it, and I ultimately don't want to, I'm going to choose to delay or just simply resist. And you can do a bunch of different ways to do this. For some people, I've talked about, and we've talked about on the podcast, having a worry time. And I think this might be, we can call it your Googling time or your checking time, right? So it might be like, all right, I feel the urge to look up X celebrity. Well, I'm not going to do it because I'm going to look him up at my worry time, or my lookup time, rather, my Google time. So you put off Googling. And then when Google time shows up, you Google them. You look them up, because between 6 and 6:15, that's Google time, and you do it for that time, and you read everything you can. You look at all the pictures so you can for that 15 minutes, even if you don't want to. You do it anyways. And once 6:15 shows up, close the laptop, throw your phone out the window, whatever you have to do, and you move on. And then when that urge comes up, even at 6:16, and says, look it up again, you go, nope, not self. That's for tomorrow's Google time. Now, you can certainly do that. I know folks will, put it off by 24 hours. They'll put it off for 48 hours. They'll put it off for a week, whatever the case may be. The point in delaying the urge is to kind of give yourself space so that the distraction can, so that you can allow yourself to get distracted by something else, by anything else, by a different celebrity, by a different person in your business. And that person again, that's delay time starts again. And you're letting yourself get bored and letting yourself get distracted and carried on with something else. Your brain, my brain, gets distracted very easily, and good, we should. And that's what we're relying on. But we're also saying you are not, and me, I suppose, are not going to be driven by this urge and this need. Okay? So that's now. All right, we've talked about 24 hours, 48 hours a week. If all you can do is delay this for a minute, for 60 seconds, great. That's success. Think about what would be the longest amount of time you can go. Like if you go all right, 5 minutes. Oh, that's going to be tough to resist. Awesome. Say, I'm going to wait for 6 minutes. right? We want to wait until it's a little bit tough, because maybe you can say, well, I can do anything for a minute. We can do anything for a minute. But then 5 minutes, well, that's going to be tough. That's going to be hard. So I'm going to push myself beyond what my comfort, what I think I can do. And then once you do it for 6 minutes, you go, I freaking did it. I was able to resist for 6 freaking minutes, or 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever it is. And then say, next time I'm going to go for 7 minutes. And we continue to extend that out, again, to allow for more and more time to let your brain get bored and distracted by something else. And you'll slowly start to show yourself that even if you have an urge, you can say, I can resist this urge. And I'm strong enough to resist this urge. And if you need to build up from a small time to the bigger time, great. If you need to try the Google time for you, or 24 hours, whatever, to experiment with yourself and see which one helps to resist. Now, to the thought about maybe saying something rude to them, or potentially other people judging you for crossing a boundary, we're going to sit with the maybe. I don't know, because you and I have no idea. Excuse me, we have no idea what we will say to somebody else. I'm all of a sudden giggling to myself, because years and years ago, I probably shared this before. Years ago, I ran across, what is his name? Emilio Estevez and his dad. Now I'm forgetting his name all of a sudden. Charlie Sheen. I got to meet, Charlie Sheen? No, the other one. Gosh, it's going to be like Stephen Sheen or something like that. Martin Sheen. I just looked him up. All right, so I saw them together in one space, and I like their movies. Anyways, point is, I did a thing where I was like, hey, so, I know you guys must hate this, but like, I love your movies, and I just, want to shake their hand and meet them, all that stuff. But guess what I did? I, in a fluster, went up to them and said, hey, I know you must love this, but I hate your movies. And went, oh. And now, I was super embarrassed. I think they gave me the benefit of the doubt, and they were like, oh, hey, thanks. I'm sure I'm not the only weirdo who has come up to them and said something weirdo like that. Point is you might mess it up and you might say something weird, but you know what? We don't know until we're there. So thinking about it, planning about it, judging yourself for it is a waste of time. It's a waste of time. When there's the urge to then go back in it and plan and consider, or beat yourself up, or shake your head, or punch yourself emotionally in the face for this potential thing that you may say, shake it off and go, we'll have to see. We'll see. When I meet them, we'll see how it goes. And I'll do my best that I can, because wouldn't you do your best you can in the first place anyways? So, and then lastly, to the point about crossing a boundary, you know what? This sounds like OCD and anxiety trying to shame you, and that's that moral component. You're doing something wrong and bad. Acknowledge, maybe I am. The information's out there, right? You're not showing up at their house and climbing over their wall, unless you are. I don't think you are. You didn't mention it. But go like, maybe I am, but maybe I'm not. It's trying to convince yourself that you're not. And I'll just give some reassurance. I rarely do this. I don't think you're crossing a boundary. The information's out there. If we're curious about someone, that's why Wikipedia exists. That's why pictures on the internet exist. We can look them up. We can be curious about something. When we're crossing a boundary, we're going to let the police tell you that you're crossing a boundary. We're going to let other people tell you. We're not letting OCD and anxiety be the boss of you. You're going to roll your eyes to OCD if and when you, in a desired time to look them up, all right, you look them up. Because this isn't me saying never ever look them up, because you might out of curiosity want to. What I'm talking mainly about is that urge, that have to, that or else, that one, the reason that you messaged me in the first place, that's the one that we're trying to resist. So, all right, I will skip on past this one, and we're going to move on to the next one, which is an audio question. So let me play it here. It comes from Cynthia. So I'm going to play that right now, and I will chat about it in a minute.
I want to say that I love the podcast, that I've been listening to it for a couple of weeks now, but I was diagnosed in 2022. I have mostly every theme under the sun, like except contamination, SOCD, existential OCD, taboo, harm, etc. Health, of course. But I wanted to ask, how do you deal with OCD seeping into things you used to love, like hobbies and interests and such? Like you could say contaminating them, for lack of a better word. I've been struggling with that for a while now, not being able to enjoy things I used to love. Just to explain a little better, because I was running out of time. Like when existential OCD tells you, I don't know, there's no point in doing this you used to love because there's no point in anything really, and and or like SOCD tells you, oh no, there's no point in watching this movie with this actor you used to like because you actually don't like him, and that kind of thing. Or like health OCD tells you, no, there's no point in going out running because you actually have a brain tumor and you're gonna die tomorrow, and like you can't really do anything you enjoy because you're just thinking about your theme all the time, and it's just like ruining the things you used to that used to bring you joy. Well, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for sending this question in. So I have a bunch of thoughts. I really appreciate that. I did a podcast episode on something like this many, many, many years ago. This is probably in like the first year of my doing this, maybe even the first like 6 months of me doing this. But that was a long time ago. So we're just going to kind of address it again because sometimes it needs to be addressed again. So like, what do? I hear this a lot from folks. Like, what happens when OCD starts creeping into hobbies or interests or things that you genuinely like, right? And it can feel like this is another incident where OCD saps joy, saps fun, and makes life suck real hard. And it's true, that's kind of what it's doing. Now, it may be doing it for a ton of reasons. As you know, OCD creeps itself into things that you love the most and you value the most. So it's understandable that it's going to creep itself into this. So I have just a couple of thoughts and a couple of different ways to look at this. But one of the themes of this was kind of like nothing really matters, right? Why would I do this? Because it doesn't, it's useless. You're going to die anyways. You don't really like that actor. Nothing exists anyways, anyways, there is no point to anything. So why do we do them then? Well, I'm going to encourage you when this thought comes up, and I'm going to backpedal on this in just a moment, and you'll hear why. When OCD comes in and says, don't do something because you don't really love it, it doesn't matter, there's no point. When OCD says, don't go for this run because you actually have a brain tumor and you're going to die anyways, or whatever it might be, I'm going to encourage you to do it anyways. And we do things in life because, simply put, we want to do them, right? Now, we can call this values. We can say it's important to us, and there's a whole argument to be made about living your values and thinking about life from an act-based perspective and pursuing joy and meaning and all of that. And we're saying, and I'm also just going to say it plainly, we do it because we want to do it. Why do you want to go for a run? Because I want to go for a run. Why am I going to go, why am I going to go to the beach? Because I want to go to the beach, all right? Whatever it is for you. So you can live your values, and even living your values when you don't want or feel like to live your values. So what does that mean? So sometimes we go through these states where we're not really into the thing that we say we're into. Now, as I've mentioned before, I'm someone who gets depressed from time to time, and just sometimes things in that state just don't sound fun. Even things that I enjoy doing, I just don't like doing them. And that happens. I've kind of learned to live with the dips, in a sense. And it's during those times that we are consistent and we keep pushing. When life is full of anxiety, and your OCD is specifically saying, don't do X, we're going to say, I'm going to keep doing X, not because I want to do it right now, but because I know it's important and I know it's good for me, right? we feel better when we do things in those dips that we know are important, because that anxiety is going to stop. That anxiety is going to pass. That depression is going to lift. And I'll tell you, I feel much better knowing that I went to work and showed up for my kids and showed up as best as I can for my wife and other people in my life. I feel better knowing that I showed up as best as I can, not as best as it's possible, but as best as I can, despite feeling bleh, right? We're going to feel better when we go to work and show up and do the things and hold up our responsibilities and do the things we typically engage in or desire to be engaging in, despite anxiety, because that anxiety is going to pass, and it's only going to feed into the depression or feed into the anxiety when you've done nothing for that time and your brain goes, see, you've done nothing. That's what, I don't know, losers or crazy people are, like whatever the verbiage is that says about you. So the other question is, well, what if I just don't know what I want, right? You kind of alluded to that as one of those questions. And I also hear that a lot, right? Well, if I'm supposed to do the things that I want to do and I value, well, what if I don't really know what I want? And what I'll challenge that is that there's an all or nothing thinking component to this, right? It's kind of this idea, like I have to do things, or the things that I do, I have to really want to do them. But again, maybe I don't really want to do them. All right. First off, there are a lot of things in life that we just kind of like doing, but we do them anyways, right? And that feeling shifts and changes, right? Our tastes change, our opinions change, our hobbies change, right? There was a time in my life when I was shoulders deep in archery. That's right, recurve Olympic style archery. So anybody who knows me knows that's, if they knew me for a while, that is all I thought about. And there was a time in my life when I would have said, I only know two things in life. I know archery and I know OCD. And that's kind of true. But I have shifted away from that. Now, I still like doing it, but the last time I've shot, probably 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a long time. So as I've mentioned before, sometimes we don't want to do the things that we want to do, and that's okay. And sometimes anxiety will say, but maybe it's just you don't know what it is that you want. So everything is in question. Everything is in flux. Right? So with that, I'm going to encourage you not to get caught in that cycle of things, that cycle of thought about what it is you do and don't want. Because oftentimes that thought process is driven by that all or nothing thinking. That if I only want to do it kind of, that means I must not want to do it. Or it can throw you back into that cycle of constantly questioning. If you're in that state, I'm going to encourage you to do it. To do it anyways. Because again, it might be one of those situations where you just feel anxious, or you feel down, or you feel depressed, or you feel distracted, or you just don't feel anything. And we got to choose something. We want to give ourselves an opportunity to get distracted by something. So going for a run, when your brain says it doesn't matter, you have a tumor, going for a run is probably going to give you more of an opportunity to get distracted by something else that you see or you're doing or you're listening to than if you just say, you're right, I'm not going to run because I might have a tumor. I'm going to sit here and ruminate about my tumor. Likely speaking, you're going to continue to ruminate about that and you're going to feel like garbage. But instead, go for that run. And it's likely you're going to get distracted. Okay, so another thing. Are we allowed to take a break from things that we like? Okay? Because sometimes as I've been talking about this, it can feel like whatever your hobbies are, you have to continue to be into those hobbies forever, right? If it's you don't want to, or if there's like no point to it, an OCD or anxiety, or even just your interests shift and change or says that you can't do it or you don't want to do it. We're allowed to sometimes take a break. And sometimes for the things that we want to do, our hobbies, our interests, sometimes taking that break can help to rekindle joy. It can help to kind of give us a reminder why it is that we like that thing. Or it's because we're falling away from that thing. And again, that's also okay. I'd say most importantly in this is that we need to allow ourselves to go with the flow of ourself and be open to maybe making a mistake. And maybe you choose wrong that day. Maybe you say, oh, I should go for a run, and it's important to go for a run. And maybe you go, oh, I don't really want to do that today. Then maybe don't. Go do something else that's important. But don't get sucked into the rumination about whether you should or you shouldn't. Now, Cynthia, I don't know if this is exactly getting at your point, but it's getting at the point for someone who's in a similar situation. For you, you've talked about, like, what if there's a brain tumor, right? And there's no point to even running, right? And I assume it's because you're going to die, your brain's going to fall out of your ears or something like that. But I'm saying in this, go run anyways, because you're going to get distracted. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with this point here, is that I want you to consider, what if OCD is wrong? What if, I know this is going to sound crazy, what if OCD was wrong? What would you gain from doing the thing anyways? Right? So if OCD, or if existential OCD is saying don't do something because nothing really matters. If our OCD is trying to convince you to not watch this movie because you don't actually like the lovey-dovey feelings, or you don't like, you don't like that actor, or romance, doesn't matter, whatever it might be. Or, lastly, like the health anxiety, right? What would you gain from going for that run, or watching that movie, or engaging with something else? You'd probably gain something great, right? So from existential OCD, if it says, why do anything, nothing really matters, there's a chance that you might enjoy your day. If OCD was wrong and things do matter, or there is meaning to things, maybe you have an opportunity to enjoy your day. If our OCD was wrong, maybe you actually have an opportunity in watching that movie to reminisce in that feeling of love and the lovey-dovey feelings and that actor or that storyline. And you'd have the opportunity to enjoy that again, whereas OCD would say, it doesn't really matter, stop doing that. Or with health OCD, right? You talked about the tumor. No one's just picking out the ones you talked about. It's, if you went for that run, maybe if OCD was wrong and you actually don't have that tumor, you would feel so proud of yourself that you went for that run. And maybe you'd feel slightly healthier tomorrow, and you'd be better at running for the other days that you'd be going out for a run. You have a lot to gain from doing the opposite of what OCD says. So that's where I'll encourage you in that, to take the risk. Because listen, if you try to engage in that activity, even though your brain says it doesn't really matter, and you and I discover that we are actually in the matrix, and that we are the only one that exists, or that there is no, or that nothing truly does matter. Okay, then it didn't matter in the first place, right? If our OCD was wrong, and maybe you don't actually like that actor, okay, you had to do something with your time. You might as well fill it with that movie, right? And if OCD is right and you actually have a brain tumor, or you were going to die the next day, okay, well, then you went for a run, right? You filled that time with something that it sounds like you kind of enjoy or find important. So, Cynthia, I hope this gives you something to think about or something to consider. But yeah, I hate hearing from folks, and not to say don't ask these questions or don't bring them up, but I hate knowing that OCD creeps in and tries to take the life that you want and takes away your joy. It's not fair, and that's not good. And that's where I encourage you to actively take it back. Go enjoy your life. That's the point of all this, right? So, resist that OCD question, do the opposite of what it says, and see what happens. I'm willing to bet it's going to be nothing. I'm willing to bet you're going to do the thing, and you're going to discover nothing happened. Now, in the middle of it, you might not get the full enjoyment out of it, which is a whole other bag of worms. Bag of worms? Anyways, it's a whole other thing. But you know what? Who knows? We might not, because you're feeling anxious, or you're questioning, you're feeling depressed, or whatever it might be. We're probably not going to get the full enjoyment, but we're going to get something. And something is certainly better than nothing, and that's what OCD wants you to have, is to feel nothing other than anxiety and emptiness. So, all right, I'll leave it at that. Again, thank you so much, Cynthia and Stella, for these questions. Keep them coming, everybody. Let's try for another 200 and see how we go. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously.